All right. Hello, everyone. It's great to see you all joining. You've officially made it to the last session of the day. I'll just let a few more members join before we get into any of our housekeeping items. I hope you all enjoyed today's sessions. If you were able to join some of the others, we had a stacked agenda on various topics with great presenters. If you missed any of the sessions, we will be emailing all of the recordings, so don't worry. And also while we wait, I will say that I did get a sneak peek for this session and it is loaded with great content and exercises. So you're going to find this to be a valuable session to wrap up your day. And then also, just as we're all settling in, I do want to mention that we have some QR codes included in the slides. So please have your cell phones handy just for when those pop up. All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our last session of the day, From Click to Commitment, an Introduction to CRO for Higher Education. I'm Haley Mullen, and I'm an Assistant Director of Paid Search here at Carnegie, and I'm very excited to be your session moderator today. Before we start, I have some housekeeping items and good reminders. First, this session is being recorded, and we'll share links to the recordings with all attendees at the end of the week, so please keep an eye on your inbox and we'll email you when recordings are available. We ask that you please use Zoom for any chats and Q&A, not Whova. Using Zoom instead will allow our presenters and support teams to more efficiently respond to your questions. At the end of the session, we will answer as many questions as time allows. If you have any questions or need help during the session, you can email the team using conferences@carnegiehighered.com or message us in Whova through the Ask Organizers Anything section of the community board. And finally, we encourage you to be social and tag @Carnegie HQ for any posts you share about today's sessions. That wraps up our housekeeping items. So with that, I will pass it over to our presenter, Jack Calderini, to get the session started.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining today. My name is Jack Calderini. I am the Senior Director of Digital Integrations here at Carnegie. Been at Carnegie for 6 years now. I've been 10 years digital marketing, 4 years tracking and analytics, and a lover of plants and the outdoors. Super excited to have you all here today. So 4 main talking points that we're going to be going over today is what is CRO? Why should you consider it? How do you do it? And how to get started with it. So first off, what is CRO? CRO is an acronym. It stands for Conversion Rate Optimization. And so what we're going to do is we're going to break down the elements of CRO. So CRO is A/B testing. All right. Well, thank you all for joining today. I appreciate your time and talk soon.
Wait, Jack, are you serious? Is that all you have for this session?
April Fools, that is not. I have a lot more information than that. So I did include this slide though, because when a lot of people talk about CRO or think about CRO, a lot of people might say it is A/B testing or split testing. And while that is correct, there's a lot more information and a lot more detail that goes into CRO, much more than A/B testing. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So we have this definition here that I like to think about when we talk about CRO and what that means. So this says that CRO is the iterative process of improving a website or landing page to increase the percentage of visitors who take a desired action, such as filling out a form. CRO involves analyzing user behavior and intent, running A/B or multivariate tests, and making data-driven changes to elements like design, content, and calls to action. So let's break that down into a couple different pieces. CRO is an iterative process. It is not a silver bullet one-time fix that will solve all of your problems and make your website work amazing. It's an ongoing and repeated process. With CRO, we aim to increase the percentage of visitors who take a desired action. And while yes, each experiment, the goal is to improve the conversion rate on a particular page, the overarching goal of CRO as a strategy is to improve conversion rates throughout the funnel. So to get people, website visitors, prospects to convert into inquiries, to get inquiries to convert into applications, and so on and so forth. So to do that, we start by analyzing user behavior and intent. So we're trying to understand what people are doing on a website, what they're not doing, but also why. And later on in this presentation, we'll talk about some tools and strategies to understand some of that information. So with CRO, we run A/B tests or split tests, or multivariate tests. And when we do that, we're trying out different versions of a web page to see that which version will convert better. And through all of this, we're making data-driven changes to elements on our website. It's not just guessing. It's not, I think that this image is going to work better because it's prettier. It's using data to say, I think this image is going to work better because of X, Y, and Z. Or I think that this element needs to be changed to this because we saw some data that suggested that. So it's really backed in data. And so why should we consider CRO? So let's talk about the impact of CRO that it can have on our marketing efforts. Traffic generation is not enough. Your website is one of your most powerful tools for student recruitment, but if visitors aren't taking the action you want them to, you're missing out on valuable opportunities. So there are three main challenges that higher education marketers face. One is that higher website traffic does not directly lead to higher enrollment. Two, the rising cost of advertising. And three, leaky funnels. Let's talk about each of those. So there's kind of this myth in marketing that if you increase the size at the top of the funnel, then the bottom of the funnel will increase proportionally. And that's definitely not true, but there is a lot to be said about diversifying marketing efforts. And so we do spend a lot of time and money and effort getting people to come to our website and hear about our brand. And there's lots of different ways to do about it. And sure, we're going to spend a lot more money to do that, but it's not a one-to-one correlation. If you double your marketing money, you're not going to get double the enrollments. That's just a fact. There's a lot of traffic that can get to our website, but it's not all created equally. So not only are we spending more to get more, we're starting to spend more to get less. An example of this comes from an article from Search Engine Land that talks about Google cost per click increases. Cost per click is the amount of money you pay per click when someone clicks on your ad from your paid Google search campaign or PPC campaigns. So Search Engine Land says that CPCs were up 13% from 2023 to 2024, compared to 19%, or I'm sorry, compared to 9% from 2022 to 2023. So it's getting more and more expensive to advertise across platforms. On top of that, there's a little bit of something going on in the political world in regards to funding. So all of us here in higher ed are having to deal with loss of funding or just uncertainty of funds. And so in a few months, who knows how much money we're going to have to spend. And so there's a lot of looking at the different types of marketing channels to understand what money is really going to go where. And then we get leaky funnels. I kind of hate that phrase, but it's commonly used and it kind of makes sense with the metaphor of funnels. So if we remember that websites are a super important marketing tool, there's a couple of key points that websites tend to fail in, especially when it comes to higher ed. Higher ed websites are usually designed to inform rather than convert. They tend to be super content heavy, kind of bulky, a lot of information. Navigation can be confusing. Again, there's a lot of parts of a higher ed website, and the navigation is sometimes lacking and not as helpful as we think it is. There tend to be long and intimidating forms, thinking about our RFI inquiry forms. I've seen a lot of forms that ask a lot of information, a lot of personal information that can be a deterrent for people who are early on in the higher ed or in the process of trying to discover a program. They may not want to give you their mailing address and their high school and their GPA when they're just, poking around a little bit. Weak or unclear call to actions. So a lot of times you might have an RFI form that is like, okay, what am I getting? What am I going to get when I fill out this RFI form? What are you going to send me? Or you may have a button. what's going to happen when I click this button? There can be confusion about that. Poor mobile experiences. More and more people are searching on mobile, and many websites do not work well on mobile. And that's a trend that's going to continue to increase throughout the years. And finally, slow page load speeds. They're I know, at least for me personally, if I go to a website and it takes long to load, I'm leaving. I am personally impatient, and so and I know a lot of the younger generation is as well. So having a fast loading website, especially on mobile, is super important. So Unbounce released this report earlier this year where they analyzed over 41,000 of their landing pages. And so within that report, they had some specific benchmarks related to the education vertical that I will talk about. So they had this really interesting data set where they looked at conversion rates based off of the reading level that a page was written on. So and so there's some tools out there that you can use. I think there's Hemingway app is a good one, where it will tell you what reading level your page is written on. And so you can see here that it kind of operates in a little bit of a bell curve design, where if you have your website, if you have a page on your website that is written on an 8th to 9th grade reading level, that has the highest conversion rate. Whereas if you have a page that's written on a professional level, that's the lowest conversion rate. In fact, if you have a page that's even written at a 5th to 7th grade reading level, that has a higher conversion rate than a professional level. And so if we think about that, higher ed websites tend to inform rather than convert. Students really want simpler content. And so that's a huge opportunity for us to look at. Poor mobile experiences. According to Unbounce, mobile made up 6 times more traffic than desktop, but desktop converted 18% better. Again, a lot of websites do not work well on mobile. And so how can CRO help to fix that? So again, CRO allows us to get more with less. So we're able to test and improve our website, and allows us to maximize existing traffic and even eventually be able to get to maximize with less traffic. So that's the ultimate goal of CRO and what the hope is. And so by doing so, we're improving the user experience. We're making the website more user-friendly, more intuitive. And again, it's all data-driven decision making. So instead of, I think we need to move the form here, I think we need to do this. It's let's run some tests, let's do some analysis, let's use some data to understand how we can improve our website. The other thing with CRO that I think is pretty cool is there's a lot of tools out there that can help you run CRO. And so it allows non-technical users to make these website changes. More and more frequently, a lot of us in higher ed are asked to wear more and more hats. And so some of you might be thinking, this sounds way too technical. And sure, there's some technical and data analysis that comes with it, but CRO can allow us to make changes without getting IT involved or the web team, or even if you don't have a web team or an IT team, or if it's one person. So that CRO allows you to kind of get in there and do some stuff yourself, which is really cool. Okay, so I just spent the last few minutes just talking about how awful everyone's websites are. And so I want to do an exercise to kind of hopefully validate some of what I was saying. So I have this QR code here. So if y'all don't mind just pulling up your phones and scanning the QR code, clicking the link. Once you do that, I'll provide further instructions.
Jack, I think something weird is going on with that link. Are you sure it's the right one?
April Fools again. I got you all. All right, cool. Keeping you on your toes, making sure everyone's paying attention. All right, moving on. So for real though, I have an exercise. So I want you all to first put yourself into the mindset of a junior in high school looking for college. And I have a picture of one here in case you're unfamiliar. So, or if anyone here is from graduate programs, think about whoever your target audience is for your grad programs. So think about first the program that you majored in. Let's say business, economics, math, architecture, whatever. Now I want you to go to your institution's homepage on desktop. We're just going to look at desktop right now. So go to your institution's homepage on desktop and let's try to find information related to your program. And while you're doing that, try to request information about your program. Now, along those same lines, let's also try to find information about the application process for that program. And similarly, try to start an application for that program. Um, you don't have to go in to actually create one, but trying to navigate the website to figure out how to create an application. So I'll give you all a couple minutes to just kind of play around with that. Just get a feel for how your website navigates as if you were a potential student. Anyone else have never gonna give you up stuck in your head now? I know I do. All right. Hopefully that was all enough time for you all to kind of play around with that. If not, feel free to keep going. If not, feel free to try that out later. So, a couple of thoughts, a couple of questions for you all. And feel free to put your responses in the chat. Feel free to keep it to yourself. But how was that? Was the information hard or easy to find in regards to your program or your application process? Did anything not work? Was there any buttons or links that just didn't work? Um, or was there something you found that you thought was a button, but was in fact not a button? That's something we see a lot. Were you able to find information about it? How was it filling out your own RFI form? Maybe it's something that so some of you've never actually done before, gotten a feel for how it actually is to fill out one of your forms. I'm curious how many of you went straight to the search bar or how many of you tried to use the navigation? We see more and more that a lot of students do tend to go straight to the search bar. Whether that's because navigation is too hard or confusing and they give up, or maybe it's just because we're just used to instant gratification and it's similar to Google. It depends, but yeah. How many extra clicks did it take for you to get to where you wanted to go? So going from an inquiry page to the application page. I've seen plenty of websites that it takes 3, 4, 5, 6 clicks to go from the program page to actually get to an application. And something else to think about too is just when was the last time your website went through a redesign? Maybe your website's outdated. Maybe your site structure needs some rejiggering. Maybe your branding needs to be relooked at. So two main points to highlight here is that businesses, not just in higher ed, but everywhere, businesses, they rarely know how prospects are using their website. That of course, most people have GA4, most people have tracking for their marketing campaigns, and you get all sorts of data from there. But a lot of people really don't understand how people are using their website and where they're failing, where the drop-off points are, where the friction points are. And again, keeping in mind that a lot of higher ed websites tend to focus on informing rather than converting, and that fuels a lot of the design of the website. So as an added difficulty, try this on mobile. Remember that according to Unbounce, mobile drives 6 times more traffic than desktop, but desktop converts 18% better. Um, so you don't have to do this now. You can if you want, but maybe try that later. Try doing that same exercise. Go to your website on your phone, try to play around with it and see how it works. Okay. So we've talked about what is CRO, kind of why you might want to consider it. Let's talk about what CRO, like how you do CRO. So there are 4 key steps in a CRO strategy: gathering data, developing hypotheses, creating experiments, and analyzing data. So first, with gathering data. So what we want to do is we want to find out what is happening on our website and why it's happening. And through that, we can kind of gather which pages need improvement and which elements on those pages can be changed to lead to improvements. And so the whole part of this process is that we're trying to find and blend quantitative data, which is the what, with the qualitative data of the why. And so we can understand what people are doing, what they're not doing, and why are they doing those things. And so there's a bunch of different tools that we can use to gather some of this data. So web analytics, the most common one that you all are probably familiar with is Google Analytics 4, GA4. There's also a lot of other ones like Adobe Analytics or Ping, or a lot of CRO tools have their own built-in analytics. There's heat maps, which offer data on scroll tracking and click tracking. So this picture is an example of scroll tracking. So this is just from the Carnegie homepage, and we can see that 50% of users only scroll down 40% of the page. So that tells us that, okay, most people are not making it to the bottom of the page. So that's an opportunity of, all right, is our most important content on the bottom of the page or on the top of the page? Let's look at potentially putting it to the top of the page. There's also click tracking, which can, if you think back to one of the questions of what did you click on? Were things working? Were they not working? Click tracking data can show us what people are clicking on and also what people are trying to click on. Maybe the design of your page is showing us that people think that a button is not as a button, but it's not actually a button. So there's a lot of interesting data that we can get from those types of tools. Session recordings. There's a lot of tools out here that do these session recordings that are exactly that. They record what people are doing. So that helps get a lot of that qualitative data of what are they doing, what are they trying to do, where are people going. So that's really interesting. You can also notice that there's some kind of weird characters with the dates. All of the screen session recording tools do anonymize a lot of personal information, which is really great because obviously we deal with a lot of personal information when it comes to higher ed. So that's why you see that there. Surveys. Surveys are a really interesting way to get direct feedback from website users. So you may see this type of thing before. I personally don't click on them a lot, but there's a lot of people that do. So this is an example of a survey from Hotjar, which is a CRO tool. And it's just asking, how would you rate your experience with our guides? And so it's a really low barrier to entry of getting information on the website. That when you click next, then it offers a free text so someone can provide specific feedback of what did they like, what did they didn't like. So now you're getting direct information from website visitors and understanding what they like, what they don't like, and giving you an opportunity to expand on that. And finally, user testing. User testing is when you get some folks, you give people a specific task on your website and you have them do it and they provide feedback on it. So The exercise that you all did earlier is an example of user testing. I asked you to go to your program page, request information, find application information. When you do user testing, you get people to do that, then they provide feedback on how that experience was. And then that gives you really interesting data to iterate on. Okay, so now we have our data, and a lot of times you end up with a lot of data. I mean, our higher ed websites tend to be huge. So we want to think about which pages we want to do some testing on and improve, and the variance and that we want to test on those pages. Finally, we also want to prioritize. Like I said, when we're doing the data gathering phase, you end up with a lot of information. So we want to prioritize pages that are really important to the marketing funnel. So let's take an example of this yellow and orange landing page here. So let's say through our testing that we found that this orange and yellow RFI landing page is a top priority. We determine it's a top priority because it gets a lot of traffic from a lot of different sources, but it's having a higher than expected bounce rate and a low conversion rate. Based on some survey data that we did, we found that students really did not like the orange and yellow color. Yeah, maybe it's our brand color, but they just found it too jarring and just bounced immediately. So now we can take that data and we can build our hypothesis. And so let's think back to middle school science, right, where we had to do all of our hypotheses. By doing X, we expect to see Y. So we take that and say by changing the background color from yellow to blue, let's say that our brand colors are yellow and blue, we expect to see the conversion rate increase. So now we have our hypothesis. We know what page we want to test it on and what element we want to test. So now let's build the experiment. And so to do that, that can be done through a CRO tool, and there's a ton of them out there. There's a lot of pros and cons to different ones, whether based off of your analytics needs, your tracking needs, there's varying costs and privacy concerns. So there's a lot of factors there. But so within our tool, we're going to build our experiment. And so this picture here is giving a visual of an A/B test. And so the idea is that it's a 50-50 split. So people come to the 10 people come to the website. 5 of them see the control, which is what exists now. 5 of them see the variant, which is our changed element, the blue one. So our 50-50 split. Couple of things to think about when doing the experiments is timeframes and statistical significance. Um, so if you were to run a test for 3 days, you might see that the conversion rate for the blue variant was 10 times higher than the orange. That's awesome, but probably not statistically significant. There's a lot of calculators and tools out there that can help you understand whether something is statistically significant. And I keep saying that. What that means is that there's a certain data point that will tell us that if a result is unlikely to have happened by chance and more likely to have happened by our impact, by the change we made. And so that has to do with sample size. Maybe you need 1,000 people to see a variation to say that this definitely works, maybe 5,000. So that can play into the time frame of maybe this experiment needs to run 3 weeks, maybe this experiment needs to run 6 weeks. All very dependent on a lot of different factors. We talked a little bit about multivariate testing previously. The idea is that instead of an A/B test, it's A, B, C, D, and so on. So you can test multiple variations at once. And so that can be a good way to test a couple of different variations and get a lot of different data, but that does tend to have a longer time frame for testing. So something to consider. Okay, so we ran our tests and we got our results. The conversion rate for our blue variant was 32%. The conversion rate for our control orange variant was 18%. All right, so now we say the blue wins. So now we will implement blue on our RFI landing page because we determined that that was the winner. But that's not it. So now what we can also do is, okay, that was the winner, but we can also continue to look at data to understand why. Yeah, it's probably because of the information we got from that survey where people said they hated orange and yellow. But there's probably some additional information in there that maybe that helps people, maybe that helped a different button show up better, for example. So there's a lot of data and insights we can get from the results. And so we can take those additional insights and apply them to other experiments or other pages. So we determined that blue was the winner for this RFI form. So now that let's go try that for another RFI form. Um, we may see that blue does not work for another RFI form, and that's okay. Failed experiments are opportunities. Let's say that in this example, blue had an 18% conversion rate, but the yellow had a 32% conversion rate. That would be terribly surprising. But we can use data to understand why that, excuse me, why that happened and go from there. And we keep testing. CRO is an iterative process. So we can take data from our winners, we can take data from our losers, and we can apply those across the board. Okay, so how to get started with CRO. So a couple of short-term and long-term strategies that can get you all started with CRO. So a couple of quick wins: improving call to action buttons, just making things more clear about what people are going to get when they do something. Click here to request information, and we'll send you a pamphlet about this program, or about admissions, or about financial aid. Something that's a little more clear that's going to get people more interested. Optimize for mobile. Again, more and more people are using mobile, and websites typically perform worse on mobile, especially when you have websites that have bad navigation, bad user experience, and load slowly on mobile. There's a lot of opportunity for improvement there. Reduce frictions in forms. Uh, I have strong opinions about RFI forms, and I know Slate people have sometimes contradictory opinions to my opinions. But RFI forms have, there's a big opportunity there to review the data being asked in RFI forms and look for ways to shorten those. And finally, make key actions above the fold. There's a lot of data that show, and for example, the scroll mapping I shared, a lot of people barely scroll below the fold. So make the goal of the page happen above the fold. And also, long term. So set up tracking and heat maps. Most of you all here have Google Analytics set up. Whether it's set up great or bare bones, then that's an opportunity. You can also set up heat maps. Microsoft Clarity is a free tool that you can install on your website that will automatically create heat maps and scroll maps and session recordings. So there's an opportunity there to kind of start gathering data for you to look at. Create a culture of continuous testing. Uh, Again, CRO is not a one-time quick fix. There's lots of opportunity to continuously test and learn and iterate and so on. And hopefully by doing that, creating a larger culture of continuous testing can improve other things. Aligning CRO with admissions and marketing goals. So what you can do is kind of think about CRO in the context of the fiscal year. So maybe at the beginning of the year, you're launching some CRO tests and experiments related to inquiry generation. Later on in the year, maybe you're doing some CRO tests related to yield. Maybe you're trying to do some tests on your yield landing pages. Again, the overall goal of CRO is to improve the conversion rate from point to point in the funnel. And finally, work with a CRO partner. There's lots of them out there, lots of people that can help with CRO.
All right. Thanks so much, Jack. That was very insightful. We had some questions come in through the Q&A and the chat. So with the time we have remaining, which is about 10 minutes, we will cover as many of them as we can. So let's start with this question. This is going back to the website considerations you had outlined, Jack. Do you have any thoughts on the request information form opening on a new tab versus the same tab versus as a pop-up?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. Overall, I am very much in favor of less clicks is better. So having the RFI form to be embedded directly on the page is going to be the best bang for your buck. If that's not possible, which believe me, I know sometimes it's not, whether it's a pop-up or a separate page, feel free to test both. I think probably again, thinking about page load and just overall user experience, opening in another window, does it then take a couple seconds to load? That can be kind of jarring, and then now you have two tabs. So maybe the pop-up might be more intuitive for that. Again, test it and see what works for you.
Awesome. This next question came in through the Q&A. Do you know of a low-cost replacement for Google Optimize? Most of the replacement services I've seen are much more expensive.
Um, that's a good question. There's a couple. So Google Optimize was Google's CRO tool. That does not exist anymore. So a couple of tools. OmniConvert is one that we use. VWO is one. Uh, Hotjar is another. Crazy Egg, I think, offers this similar things. So those are kind of some of the cheaper ones. But there are some very expensive ones out there.
I imagine. So this question came in through the chat. It's what is your perspective on chatbots, detraction, or have students come to expect them in their immediacy of service slash answers?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I don't know if I have any data to back up my opinions on this. I think if anyone has any data in the chat, please share. Um, Chatbots can be really great, but I have rarely seen them work well. And I think it depends on kind of what you're trying to go for. If you're trying to make it more conversational, then have it be conversational. If it's more of how do I get to this, like how can I get to this page, then it should serve that purpose. I personally don't really use chatbots because I have not find them to work well, regardless of the vertical. So I would think if you're going to do it, make sure it works well.
All right, this next one's an interesting one. How do you balance the lower grade reading level with accreditation requirements?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Um, I don't know if I have a perfect answer for that. I think I think the biggest thing to keep in mind with the reading level is just a lot of times simpler is better when it comes to content. Um, and so maybe not using as many. And there was actually some data points in that Unbounce article, which feel free to look at, everyone. Some information related to the number of I forget the phrasing, not big words, but like advanced words. Um, and so it kind of said that you want to stay away from using bigger advanced words because people might not understand it exactly. So just the overall sentiment is that simpler is better, even though you think these people are, even though you think the people that come to the website are educated, which they are, but simpler is better.
All right, this is the last one that I'm seeing on my end from the Q&A, and I think you might have answered this one towards the end of the presentation, but are there specific tools you recommend to conduct heat mapping or session recordings?
Yeah, so a lot of the CRO tools can have those built in for kind of a easy barrier to entry. Microsoft Clarity is a free tool, not at all to be confused with Carnegie Clarity, Microsoft Clarity. It's a free tool that you install on your website. You can just install it everywhere. You can do it, through the website code or through Google Tag Manager, and that will have all that information kind of pre-built for you. So that's what I would suggest.
Okay, and then on that same topic, are there any privacy concerns with heat mapping and session recording tools that you're aware of?
Yeah, it is a really great question. It's one of those things where it really depends on what your institution's privacy policy is. Um, maybe you have something in your privacy policy that says like, "Oh, we're tracking you," but maybe because of your certain legal requirements, you are required to explicitly say, "We are doing X, Y, and Z." There's also the consideration of consent, which again very much depends on what your institution's legal perspective is on it. Um, do you need people to agree to tracking in order to get heat mapping for that individual? Or maybe you are in a situation where by being on the website, you agree to all tracking. So that is a case by case, depending on your company or your institution's legal stance.
Okay, and it looks like we just have one more question in the Q&A. I know I said that was the last one, but one last one. Just keeping an eye on the clock, we have about 4 minutes left. This question is, lots of stakeholders are involved in what goes where on a higher ed website and how. Do you have specific tips for generating consensus that CRO is worth the expenditure needed in people hours and to get the compromise needed to change content? Proof of concept, question mark.
Yeah, it's a really great point, and something that I think is a really interesting benefit of CRO, because instead of coming from a place of trying to convince people to change the website as we need to change it, this is a final thing. With CRO, you can have it actually be a proof of concept. So you could say, hey, let's try this out. We have the data to back it up. Let's try out this variation. We know it's going to take 6 weeks. Let's try it out for 6 weeks. If it works, awesome. Then our website is going to improve. If it doesn't work, then okay, what we have is already working great, and now we have some additional data to continuously improve. So I see it as a almost low cost, like let's try it out and see if what I'm saying is valid kind of thing.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you everyone for your thoughtful questions. If you have any other questions, please post it in the Whova's Q&A feature on the right side of your screen, and our presenter or a member of the workshop team will reply on that page. So to close things out, thank you all for joining today's digital marketing workshop, and an enormous thanks to all of our presenters for sharing their insights and expertise. Just a few reminders before we sign off. As an exclusive promotion for our digital marketing workshop attendees, we are offering 20% off 12-month conversion rate optimization packages. So please scan the QR code on your screen and complete the form by May 31st to claim the offer. This is a really amazing offer, so I hope you all take advantage of it. All of today's workshop sessions were recorded and will be shared along with the session slides at the end of the week. So please keep an eye on your inbox and we'll email you when the resources are live. Please don't forget to fill out our post-webinar survey. It takes less than 3 minutes to complete, and it's incredibly helpful to our team as we're always looking to improve the content and delivery of our workshops. And lastly, whether you joined for one session or the whole day, we hope you found today's content to be valuable. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Carnegie event. Bye, everyone.